Thank you for joining us to Welcoming Play Spaces, presented by Cass Wolfe from Child Care Services Association.
Hi, Alma. Thanks. I'm glad to be here and to talk a little bit about play spaces in shelter environments and how to think about making those welcoming spaces. So without further ado, let's get started. I want you to start by feeling. So spaces invoke feelings. I want you to consider this space. And I want you to consider this space. How does this make you feel? And this space. So if you're like me, they feel like very different spaces to me. The first one is my happy place. I go there before, after work to feel calm and relaxed and pulled together. The second space, I went there as a mom when my child was young, and it's a space that, for me, creates nervous energy. There's a lot of sound, there's a lot of lights, there's a lot of buzz, there's a lot of people, there's a lot going on. And so not to me a calming space. This third space, if you look at it, it's a really small room, storage room. It does what it's supposed to, but it does not invoke calm. It sort of feels to me cluttered, chaotic, things that are way up high that could fall on me. So it's not a space that I find welcoming. So I offer these to you as a way to start thinking about welcoming and to think about what it would be like to have a space that is welcoming to the young children that you work with who are in your environments. So children's play spaces are spaces that we want to have that are calming, that are inviting and welcoming to children, that make them feel safe and secure, and that provide joy and encourage play. And one more thing, that they change when children's interests change or your interests change. Might want to shake it up a little bit. So I'm going to start by talking about some elements of the environment that you want to have. And this room here is a gorgeous room in an early childhood space. And I'm not by any means suggesting that this is what you should be creating. This is aspirational, but there's elements that you're going to see about the environment that I'm going to point out to you. Light, how light is used in this space. How color is used in this space. You can see it's pretty muted colors. Sound, of course, we can't see, we can only hear. And since it's not a video, we're going to make some assumptions that it's a calm sounding space. Nature, you can see elements of nature through the plants that are hanging and the table. And the table has a basket with rocks in it. Texture, soft, fuzzy, cold, warm, and softness, of course, which is what you're seeing with the couch and the pillows. So those are all elements that you want to be thinking about in an environment for young children. But first, talk about a little bit more is lighting. And you can see, yes, this is my office. You can see two pictures here. One where I've got the artificial overhead neon lights on, 4 of them in a pretty small space, lights, and the window shade closed. And the second using natural light and a floor lamp. And you can see the differences in the shadows. And so that's just an example of how lighting makes a difference. Quickly moving to coloring, thinking about not just thinking about the walls, your floors, whether it's carpets or flooring, and the equipment and materials in your room. Color, there can be an overwhelming amount of it, or there can be a moderate amount. If you look at the top 3 colors, the blue, the brown, and the green, those are colors that invoke a sense of well-being, a sense of calm, a sense of nurturing and reducing fatigue. And guess what? If you think about it, they are also the colors of the earth. There are sky, our water, the earth itself, the trees, the greenery around us. And so it's really interesting to me that those are the colors that invoke a calmness and a nurturing. Of course, our earth has orange, red, and yellow in it because there's birds and flowers, there's trees in the fall and in the spring. But those are accent colors. So as you think about your room, think about those earthy tones, those top three calming, nurturing tones and colors as things that you maybe want to have the majority of. And then maybe accents. Maybe you want a yellow wall or a piece of a wall that's yellow. Maybe not that bright yellow, but maybe some shade of yellow. So there's lots of options, but color is something that is your friend, and it's something that can work against what you're trying to do. So just pay attention to color. When you think about nature and natural, of course, here is some grasses. These grew in my garden many years ago, so they're really durable, and you can think about using them in something like that, some elements of nature in your space to bring in that earthy sense again. And on our next slide, we're going to look at, this is in one of the shelters that we're working with, this soft space for parents and children. I can imagine a mom sitting on this chair with her child and reading a book or singing songs or just having some quiet time. You know, it might be nice to put a basket of books, like a wicker basket on the floor here. But that is all possible and would help support a soft space. Structural considerations. Along with environmental considerations, you really need to think about what are the structural things. So the first one is safety, of course. Security and comfort. We need children to feel safe and to feel comforted in the space. If you have a large enough space, or if you can have more than one space, think about spaces for individual children and small groups of children. Think about quiet and active areas. For example, if you've got a bunch of trucks or cars or blocks or something, separate that from an area where there's individual space or where there's books maybe. And then, of course, the structural requirement is that you have elements that allow you to organize the space, whether that's bins, whether that's shelves, whether that's bookcases, any kind of thing, but a well-organized space, of course. Scale is something you need to consider too, because scale is proportionate to the person that's experiencing it. In other words, if you have a baby in your playroom, that space is going to be very different than for someone who's an adult. Remember when you were sledding as a child, or you were climbing hills as a child and they seemed very, very big, and you go back as an adult and they're actually not very big? That's scale. So giving that perspective and using that perspective, especially for children who are feeling vulnerable, who maybe have experienced trauma in their lives, then scale and structure and security and safety, these are all really important factors. So here's an example of a way to create some individual space. Again, this is in a shelter we're currently working with, and this lovely tent is hanging from the ceiling. There actually is a clip, it's not shown in this instance, in this photo, but you could clip the tent somewhere so that you, as the adult, can still see in, but the child could also have some more feeling of being in an enclosed space. I also really like that this tent is in the corner. Children who are traumatized are often looking over their shoulders. They don't feel safe, they don't feel secure. So the message here is that this is a very safe, very nurturing, very soft place for a young child. Also thinking about the space, I don't show it on the slide, but children who have been hurt or have been traumatized are also often looking for an escape route. They need to know how to get out of a situation. So as this walk out of this tent, it's not got 5 things in front of it. It's got an open path. And think about the space that you make, that it has pathways that children can walk through, and it has spaces also for children who don't want to be touched, maybe have sensory challenges, so that there's a lot of space available. As I mentioned, organization is really important. Removing clutter. Now, I happen to think even this bookcase is a bit too cluttered because it's got so many things that are not related in it. It's not like things. It's got books, an alarm clock, stuffed animals, and toys. And then a few other things like a baseball. Not sure why that's there. Maybe it's just an artist's rendition of how to use this shelving. But I would say it's a lovely open shelf for older kids especially, maybe with some clear plastic bins and some empty space on it. You know, you want to probably not have everything full on a shelf like this. As you develop child spaces, we talked about scale, so get down on their level, sit on the floor, lay on the floor, look around. How does it feel? What's it look like? Probably pretty different than it looks when you're standing at 5 or 6 feet tall. Consider trauma. I've mentioned that some, but think about the children in your program. Think about what you know about trauma-informed care. Think about how you can reduce loud noises, how you can reduce chaos, escape routes, private spaces, all of those factors that will help a child build their resilience. And I encourage you to find a happy place between empty and overcrowded. So don't do the cleanup to the point where you've got nothing left, of course, but that it feels like it's a space that isn't so overcrowded. If you go into, my experience is if I go into a clothing store and every rack is jammed full of clothing, I usually turn around and walk out because I can't see what's there. So a child would be the same way. If there's so much stuff in the place, they are not going to feel like this is a place that's sending a message. Come and see what I have to offer. And to that point, rotate materials. You probably have more materials in your room than you need at one time. And an early childhood trick is to rotate materials. That way they don't get stale. They become new when they come out again. And yes, store those not in use. And I know you may end up with big plastic tin bins in your office that are stacked. But, you know, if you can find spaces to store those, that would be great. This is not a storage room, your space, child space, but a playroom. And then this last important point, I can't make it enough. Consider that you don't need to use everything that is donated to you. You probably have a lot of community members who support your organization, which is wonderful. And probably they give you lots of things. And you have to learn sometimes how to say no, thank you, or you have to learn sometimes how to finesse a donation that isn't exactly what you need. So maybe some of those things that you can't use, they either go to a different thrift shop, they either go home with a child or go wherever a child goes when they leave your shelter, or they just get thrown away because some of them aren't going to be in a condition that you actually really want to use them. But you don't have to use everything that's given to you, and you don't have to use it at once. So I also want you to think about observing how children use the space. Think about it from their perspectives. Again, sitting on the floor, but also putting yourselves in their shoes and observing how they use it. What does it tell you if the children are always wandering in space? It tells me that they're not engaged, that they're not finding things interesting. Maybe it's just that you need to show a child or a couple of children how to play with a couple of the materials. Maybe they've never seen anything like this and they're just overwhelmed by it. But if they're really engaged in one thing, probably it means you need more than that one thing. Or you need to think about, well, that's interesting to them. What else that's like that might be interesting? And are they always fighting over one or more things? So you have two choices there. One is to take that thing away because it keeps causing conflict, but probably a wiser or better option is to try to find something else just like it or similar to it so that there's more to share. Or make ground rules about how long each child can use it. What if there's something that's never used? Move it out. Get rid of it. You don't need it right now. I'm not saying get rid of it permanently, because in another couple weeks or months, it might be just what some other children are interested in. So put it in one of your storage bins. But if you put it out 3 or 4 times over the course of a few months and it never gets used, it's time to give it up. And that's okay. So I'm going to this picture as aspirational, not because I'm thinking this is what your playroom should look like, because of course it's not going to, unless you have gazillion dollars to build a whole new facility, right? But I want you to look at the paint color. You know, it's a really deep blue. I think it's a rather calming blue. I want you to notice the carpets on top of carpets. So there are area rugs and area rugs on them. Notice over here, these round circles. Those are actually places that children can crawl into, little cozy spots. Notice that this table is at floor level for your toddlers and your crawlers. Somebody's probably crawling over it. And the child furniture is small. And these things hanging from the ceiling create scale. They bring down the top of the room to a smaller, more inviting space. So again, it's just an aspirational, gives you some ideas. This is a different idea I got when I was looking through Pinterest for this presentation, is that can be a furnishing hack, excuse me. These are rain gutters. You can buy them in these small spots, put them in a corner, put lightweight books in them or something else, but it creates, voila, a little instant library, pretty cheaply made. So a few cautions as we wrap this up. Make sure that nothing's up high that could land on a head and hurt you, or more importantly, hurt a child. Secure shelving to the wall. Bookcases and dressers are notorious for falling over and killing children, right? So they need to be secured to the wall. And even some of those low furnishings, make sure they're not so lightweight that a toddler could pull that over on themselves. Make sure all the cords and the wires are out of the way. Tuck them behind. You know, I showed you a couple examples of a floor lamp, but that floor lamp has to be secured in such a way that nobody's going to try to learn how to stand by pulling on that, because you can imagine, you know what would happen there. Likewise, the cords. And use outlet covers that need to be installed. It's not hard and they're not expensive. But not just those little plastic guys. Because you know what happens with those little plastic things that you literally push into the outlet? You have to take them out to use the vacuum or a light or whatever. And we forget to put them back in, and then the vacuum eats it, and then the vacuum cleaner's broken, or worse, a child puts it in their mouth. So they're just really not a good idea. They're give a false sense of security, whereas an outlet cover requires that the plug gets manipulated in order to insert the plug into the outlet. I'm sorry, the outlet needs to get manipulated. And speaking of choking, buy choke tube testers. They're available at places like Amazon. They're available many places, education stores. So those are really important cautions to have. And so as I leave you, I want you to think about play spaces that invoke joy and engagement, where families and children can find calm and soak up good feelings. And it's really important to not be overwhelmed, but to start small. Maybe start with a corner of your space and grow as you get funds or time, or maybe someone can donate a bucket of paint. I forgot to mention when we're talking about donations that you get, be intentional, and on your website, put donations that you would like to have for children. Maybe it's children's books, maybe it's toys. But that way people know what to give you and don't give you secondhand, halfway broken things that their children have outgrown. So think about your space, be intentional, imagine that it's going to change over time, and let it be a dynamic space and have fun with it. And I thank you for your time and good luck going forward.